Dr. Hana Kim stared at her computer screen with wide eyes. The numbers dancing across the monitor made no sense. For 3 years, she had studied alien life at the Korean Institute of Science and Technology. She knew every possible reading that could appear on her instruments. But this was different. This was impossible. The quantum signatures coming from Earth's upper atmosphere looked like nothing she had ever seen. The energy patterns twisted and bent in ways that broke every rule of physics she knew. Hana rubbed her tired eyes and looked again. The readings were still there, growing stronger by the minute. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself. Across the city of Seoul, Daeho Park was having an equally strange morning. His phone had been ringing nonstop since 5 in the morning. As a government liaison for unusual events, he was used to strange calls. But today was different. Reports were coming in from all over the world about objects in the sky that shouldn't exist. "Sir, we have another sighting," his assistant said, rushing into his office with a stack of papers. "This time it's over New York. The pilots say the object just appeared out of nowhere." Daeho looked at the photos spread across his desk. Each one showed the same thing: sleek, curved ships that seemed to shimmer like heat waves. They didn't look like any aircraft he knew. More importantly, they didn't seem to follow the laws of physics. The objects appeared and disappeared without warning, leaving no trace on radar. "Get me the defense minister," Daeho said, reaching for his secure phone. "We need to alert all our allies. Something big is happening." High above the Earth, Yuna Lee stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the blue planet grow larger through the viewing screen. After 2,000 years of preparation, she was finally home. But this Earth was not the world she remembered from the history files. This was an earlier time, when humans were still bound by their physical bodies and limited thinking. "Temporal readings confirm we have arrived in the correct time period," said Minho Choi, walking up beside her. His tall frame moved with the grace that all their people had developed over centuries of evolution. "We are now in the year 2024 of the old calendar." Yuna nodded. Through the ship's quantum sensors, she could feel the minds of 7 billion humans below. They were so different from her people, wild, chaotic, full of emotions that her kind had long ago learned to control. But those same emotions might be exactly what they needed. "Begin the approach sequence," she ordered. "Remember, these humans have never seen beings like us. We must be careful not to frighten them too much." The first ship appeared over Seoul just as Dr. Hana Kim was leaving her laboratory. She had decided to go home early, her head spinning from the impossible readings on her instruments. As she walked across the parking lot, a shadow fell over her. She looked up and her heart stopped. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was about the size of a small building, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. The metal, if it was metal, shimmered with colors that hurt to look at directly. Most disturbing of all, the ship made no sound. It simply hung in the air as if gravity had forgotten it existed. Hana fumbled for her phone, but her hands were shaking too much to work the buttons. Around her, other people had stopped what they were doing to stare at the sky. Some were taking pictures. Others were running. A few had fallen to their knees in prayer. The ship began to descend slowly toward the open area in front of the science building. As it came closer, Hana could see that its surface wasn't solid. It seemed to shift and change, as if she was looking at it through water. The air around the ship sparkled with tiny lights that reminded her of fireflies. At the same time, Daeho Park was racing across the city in his government car. Reports were coming in from everywhere. Ships over Tokyo, London, New York, and dozens of other cities. But Seoul seemed to be the center of whatever was happening. The largest ship had been spotted heading directly for the science district. "Sir, the military wants to know if they should shoot," his driver said. "Listening to the radio." "Tell them to hold their fire," Daeho replied. "If these visitors wanted to hurt us, they probably would have done it already." The ship settled onto the ground with no more sound than a feather landing on water. For several minutes, nothing happened. The crowd that had gathered kept a safe distance, waiting to see what would emerge from the strange craft. Then a door appeared in the ship's side. It simply formed out of nothing, as if the metal had decided to open itself. A ramp extended to the ground and figures began to walk down it. Hana gasped when she saw them. They looked human, but not quite. They were taller than normal people, with long limbs and faces that seemed too perfect to be real. Their skin had a slight glow to it, and their eyes were larger than human eyes should be. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of the same shifting material as their ship. The first figure to reach the ground was a woman with long black hair that moved as if it was underwater. She looked around at the crowd of humans with an expression that might have been sadness or regret. When her eyes met Hana's, the scientist felt something touch her mind, just for a moment, like a gentle hand on her thoughts. The woman raised her hand, and somehow everyone in the crowd knew she meant peace. She opened her mouth and spoke, but the words that came out were not Korean or any other human language. They were sounds that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. "We are your children." The words formed in Hana's head. "We have come home." More figures emerged from the ship, men and women who moved with the same impossible grace. One of them, a man with silver-streaked hair, approached the woman who had first spoken. He carried a device that looked like a crystal filled with swirling light. "The quantum translation matrix is working," he said, and this time his words came through clearly in Korean. "We can communicate with them." Daeho Park arrived just as the beings from the ship began to speak to the crowd. He pushed through the circle of onlookers, his hand resting on his radio but not calling for backup. Something about these visitors made him feel that weapons would be useless anyway. "I am Yuna Lee," the first woman said, her voice carrying clearly across the open area. "I speak for those who have come to help you. We know this is frightening. We know you have questions, but please understand we are not invaders. We are your own people, returned from a time far in your future." The crowd murmured in disbelief. Several people laughed nervously. But Hana Kim felt something in her chest, a recognition that she couldn't explain. These beings, whatever they were, felt familiar in a way that made no sense. "We have little time to explain everything," Yuna continued. "Your world is about to face a danger that threatens not just your species, but all life in this part of the galaxy. We have come to warn you and to help you prepare, but first you must understand the truth about what humanity really is, and what you are destined to become." Min-Ho Choi stepped forward, the crystal device in his hands beginning to glow brighter. "We will show you," he said, "but we ask for your trust. We ask that your leaders and your scientists come to meet with us. The future of all mankind depends on what happens in the next few days." As if to prove their peaceful intentions, Yuna gestured to another member of their group. This being approached a man in the crowd who was leaning heavily on a walking stick. Without speaking, the visitor placed a hand on the man's shoulder. The man's eyes went wide and he stood up straight. His walking stick fell to the ground as he took his first pain-free steps in years. The crowd gasped and pressed forward, but the visitors raised their hands for calm. "This is just the beginning," Yuna said. "We have much more to share, but it must be done properly with your world's leaders and wise ones present. Will you help us arrange this meeting?" Daeho Park stepped forward, his training overcoming his amazement. "I can make the calls," he said, "but you'll have to give us time to convince people." "This is a lot to believe." Yuna Lee smiled, and for a moment she looked completely human. "We understand," she said. "We were once exactly like you. Time will make all things clear." 3 days after the ships appeared, the world had changed completely. Every news channel showed the same images over and over. Tall, graceful beings walking among humans, healing the sick with a touch, and speaking of truths that no one could understand yet. The emergency meeting had been arranged in Geneva, Switzerland. Representatives from every major nation sat around a circular table that had been built, specially for this event. Dr. Hana Kim found herself sitting between the president of South Korea and a general from the United States military. She still couldn't believe she was there. "I study alien life," she had told Daeho Park when he asked her to come. "But I never expected to actually meet any." "None of us did," Daeho had replied. "But they asked for you specifically. They said you were important to what comes next." Now as she sat in the Great Hall in Geneva, Hana watched Yuna Lee and her companions prepare their presentation. They had brought devices that looked like works of art, crystalline structures that hummed with energy and cast rainbow lights on the walls. Min-Ho Choi stood at the center of the room, his hands moving over a device that projected images into the air above everyone's heads. The pictures were so clear and detailed that they looked more real than reality itself. "Before we show you what we have come to reveal," Yuna said, "you must understand something important. What you are about to see may be difficult to accept. Your entire understanding of human history is about to change." The President of the United States leaned forward in his chair. "We're listening," he said. But we'll need proof of whatever you're claiming. Yuna nodded to Minho, who activated his device. The air above the table filled with a swirling galaxy of stars. But this wasn't just a picture. It was alive, moving, showing the dance of planets and suns across millions of years. This is your galaxy as we see it from our time, Minho said. Watch carefully. We will show you the true story of humanity. The image zoomed in to show Earth, but not the Earth that everyone knew. This was Earth millions of years ago when the first humans were learning to use tools. But there was something else in the image. Streams of light that flowed backward through time like rivers running uphill. What you call evolution, said another of the visitors, a man named Jinwoo Han, is not what you think it is. Humanity did not develop by accident. You were guided. The images changed to show different periods of human history, but now everyone could see the streams of light touching certain humans at crucial moments. The invention of fire, the development of agriculture, the first cities, all of them connected by these mysterious flows of energy. You were guided by yourselves, Yuna explained. By us, by what humanity becomes in the far future. We learned to send knowledge backward through time, to help our ancestors, you, develop the abilities you would need to survive what is coming. Dr. Hana Kim felt her scientific mind rebelling against what she was hearing. That's impossible, she said. You can't change the past. Cause and effect don't work that way. A woman among the visitors stepped forward. She was introduced as Kyungmin Seo, and she looked at Hana with eyes that seemed to hold starlight. You are thinking in terms of linear time, she said. But time is not a straight line. It is more like a web, with connections running in all directions. Consciousness can follow those connections. To demonstrate, Kyungmin approached Dr. Hana Kim. May I show you? She asked. Hana hesitated, then nodded. Kyungmin placed her hand gently on Hana's forehead, and suddenly the world exploded into light and possibility. Hana could see everything at once, past, present, and future, spreading out like a vast landscape. She could see herself as a child, dreaming of discovering life among the stars. She could see herself as an old woman, leading expeditions to distant galaxies, and she could see the connections between all of it. The quantum threads that linked every moment to every other moment. Most shocking of all, she could see the streams of knowledge flowing backward from the future, every breakthrough in science, every moment of inspiration, every leap of human understanding. They were all connected to these flows of information from advanced humanity. Einstein, she whispered, understanding flooding through her. Tesla, Darwin, all of them. They were receiving knowledge from you. From us, Kyungmin corrected gently, from what humanity becomes. You are not separate from us. We are you, grown into what you can become. The connection ended and Hana fell back into her chair, her mind reeling. Around the table, the other representatives were staring at her with concern. What did you see? Daeho Park asked. Everything, Hana said weakly. I saw everything. Minho Choi's device showed new images. Humans in the modern era, but with energy fields around them that most people couldn't see. The process is accelerating, he said. Humanity is approaching a crucial point in its development. Soon, many of you will begin to develop conscious control over quantum fields. What does that mean? Asked the British Prime Minister. It means, said Jinwoo Han, that you will be able to do things that seem impossible today. Move objects with your thoughts, travel instantly across vast distances, communicate directly from mind to mind. You will become what your ancestors called gods. The room erupted in excited conversation, but Yuna raised her hand for silence. This should be a time of celebration, she said. But it is not. This evolution has attracted attention from something that we had hoped never to face again. The images in the air changed to show something that made everyone in the room fall silent. It was darkness given form, a writhing mass of shadow that seemed to eat light itself. Wherever it touched, stars went out and planets became lifeless rocks. We call it the Void Collective, Minho said, his voice heavy with old pain. It is a consciousness that feeds on the life force of civilizations that develop quantum abilities. It has destroyed thousands of species across the galaxy. How do you know all this? The Russian president asked. Because it nearly destroyed us too, Yuna replied. In our timeline, when humanity first developed quantum powers, the Void Collective came. Most of our people died in the war that followed. Only a few thousand of us escaped to a hidden dimension, where we have spent 2,000 years preparing for this moment. Kyungmin Seo activated another device. and the air filled with tactical displays showing the movement of the Void Collective across space. "It has detected your approaching evolution," she said. "It is already on its way to Earth. We estimate it will arrive within 1 year." The room fell into stunned silence. Finally, the Secretary General of the United Nations spoke up. "What can we do? How do we fight something like that?" "You cannot fight it with your current technology," Jin Wuhan said. "Bullets and bombs are useless against a creature that exists partially outside normal space-time. The only weapon that works against the Void Collective is consciousness itself, the same power that it seeks to consume." "But that's our weakness," Daeho Park said. "We don't have quantum abilities yet." "Some of you do," Yuna said, looking directly at Dr. Hana Kim. "The evolution has already begun. There are humans all over your world who are starting to show signs of quantum sensitivity. They experience things that others call intuition, psychic phenomena, or unexplained luck. These are the first signs of quantum consciousness emerging." Hana thought about her own experiences in the laboratory, the times when she seemed to know which experiments would work before she even tried them, the moments when broken equipment would mysteriously start working again when she touched it. "We need to find these people," she said suddenly. "We need to train them." "Yes," Kyungmin agreed. "But it is not that simple. Forced evolution is dangerous. Push too hard too fast and the human mind can break. We learned this the hard way in our own time." Minho brought up new images showing training facilities and meditation centers. "We have methods that can safely accelerate the awakening process," he said. "But it requires volunteers who are willing to risk everything for the future of their species." "How many people would we need?" asked the Chinese premier. "As many as possible," Yuna replied. "The Void Collective's power grows with each mind it consumes. Our only hope is to have enough awakened humans to create a planetary defense network, a web of consciousness that can resist its influence." Dr. Hana Kim stood up from her chair. "I volunteer," she said. "If this is really happening, if this threat is real, then someone has to be first." Daeho Park stood up next to her. "Count me in too." One by one, others around the table began to stand. Military leaders, scientists, politicians. People who had spent their careers being practical and cautious were volunteering for something that sounded like science fiction. "There is something else you must understand," Yuna said when the room had settled down again. "We cannot do this for you. In our time we became too logical, too controlled. We lost the chaotic creativity that makes baseline humans so dangerous to beings like the Void Collective. We need your wild emotions, your unpredictable thoughts, your ability to believe in impossible things." "You're saying that being less evolved is an advantage?" the German chancellor asked. "In this case, yes," Kyungmin replied with a sad smile. "We have spent 2,000 years becoming perfect. But perfection is predictable. The Void Collective understands perfection." 2 weeks after the Geneva meeting, Dr. Hana Kim stood in a room that shouldn't exist. The evolved humans had built their first training center in the mountains of South Korea, using technology that bent space to create more room inside than outside. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Focus on the quantum field around you," Kyungmin Seo said, her voice calm and patient. "Don't try to control it. Just feel it." Hana closed her eyes and tried to sense what Kyungmin was talking about. At first there was nothing. Then slowly, she began to feel something like a gentle current in the air around her. It was warm and alive, and it responded to her emotions. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Good. Now watch." Hana opened her eyes to see Kyungmin holding her hand over a wilted flower. The plant began to straighten and bloom, its petals growing brighter and healthier by the moment. "Life force flows through the quantum field," Kyungmin explained. "With practice, you can learn to direct it." But their training was interrupted by an urgent call from Daeho Park. His voice came through the communication device with tension that made everyone stop what they were doing. "We need everyone at the main briefing room immediately," he said. "Something's happening around the world. Something bad." When Hana and the others arrived, they found Daeho standing with Taehyun-oh, one of the evolved humans who specialized in military strategy. The man's usually calm face was tight with worry. "Show them," Daeho said. Taehyun activated a holographic display that filled the room with images from around the globe. The pictures were disturbing. Technology failing for no reason. People collapsing from unexplained exhaustion, and in some places, reality itself seemed to be miles wrong. These incidents began 3 days ago, Taehyun said. At first we thought they were random malfunctions. But there's a pattern. The display zoomed in on a map of the world, showing red dots where the strange events had occurred. The dots formed a rough spiral pattern that was slowly tightening toward populated areas. It's a probe, said So Young-yoon, another evolved human who had just entered the room. Her specialty was quantum engineering, and she looked frightened. The Void Collective is testing our defenses. I thought you said we had a year, Hana said. We thought we did, Yoon-lee replied, appearing in the doorway with Min-ho Choi beside her. But it seems the quantum awakening happening on your world has accelerated its approach. Min-ho's hands moved over his crystalline device, bringing up new images that made everyone in the room take a step back. These showed space itself being twisted and torn, with something dark and massive moving through the tiers. The Void Collective doesn't travel through normal space, he explained. It moves through the spaces between dimensions, using the quantum signatures of evolving civilizations as a guide. The more your people awaken to their abilities, the brighter the signal becomes. So our training is making things worse? Daeho asked. No, Taehyun said firmly. Without the training, you would have no chance at all. The Void Collective was already coming. Now at least you'll be ready for it. So Young brought up a detailed analysis of the recent incidents. Look at this pattern, she said. The reality distortions are strongest in areas where people are naturally developing quantum sensitivity. It's targeting your emerging psychics. Hana studied the data with growing horror. It's trying to corrupt them before they can fully awaken. Exactly, Yuna confirmed. This is how the Void Collective operates. It doesn't wait for a species to fully develop quantum abilities. It attacks during the vulnerable transition period, when individuals are strong enough to be useful but not strong enough to resist. The display changed to show reports from the affected areas. People were describing nightmares that felt more real than waking life. Technology that seemed to develop a malicious intelligence of its own. And worst of all, other people who had begun acting strangely, as if something else was controlling their thoughts. It's already beginning to influence some of your people, Min-ho said grimly. Once a consciousness is touched by the Void Collective, it becomes a node in its network. The infected person retains their memories and personality, but their loyalty shifts to the collective. Daeho Park felt a chill run down his spine. How can we tell who's been infected? That's the problem, Taehyun replied. You can't, not easily. The Void Collective is subtle. It doesn't change people dramatically at first. It just tilts their thinking in certain directions, makes them more suspicious of others, more willing to believe that humanity can't win, more likely to argue against unity and cooperation. Hana thought about her colleagues back at the Institute. Had any of them been acting strangely lately? It was hard to tell. Everyone was acting strangely since the evolved humans arrived. We need to accelerate the training program, Kyungmin said. Get as many people awakened as possible before the influence spreads further. But you said forced awakening was dangerous, Hana pointed out. It is, So-young admitted. But the alternative is worse. At least if someone's mind breaks during training, they're still human. If they're taken by the Void Collective. She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The holographic display showed images from the evolved human's own history. Cities full of people who moved in perfect unison, their eyes empty of individual thought. A new voice joined the conversation as Minji Kang entered the room. She was the cultural specialist among the evolved humans, and she had been studying different human societies to understand how they might respond to quantum training. I've been analyzing the infection patterns, she said. There's something interesting. The Void Collective is having more trouble influencing people from certain cultural backgrounds. The display changed to show a breakdown by region and culture. Communities with strong traditions of meditation, martial arts, or spiritual practice are showing higher resistance rates, Minji continued. It seems that people who have trained their minds to focus and center themselves are naturally more resistant to outside influence. That makes sense, Kyungmin said. Mental discipline is one of the foundations of quantum consciousness. If someone has already developed that discipline through traditional practices, they're partway to awakening already. Daeho Park was studying the resistance data with interest. So we should focus our training efforts on areas where people are already somewhat prepared. Partially, Yuna replied. But we also can't abandon the places where people are more vulnerable. The Void Collective will target those populations specifically. As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Taehyun's device lit up with urgent alerts. What is it? Hana asked. Multiple reality distortions detected, Taehyun said, his fingers dancing over the controls. Something big is happening in Tokyo. The main display filled with live feeds from the Japanese capital. The images were disturbing. Buildings that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Crowds of people standing perfectly still in the middle of busy streets and in the sky above the city. A patch of absolute darkness that hurt to look at directly. It's a full manifestation, Minho said, his face pale. The Void Collective is testing its ability to maintain a presence in your reality. Can we stop it? Daeho asked. Not from here, So-young replied. We'd need awakened humans on the ground in Tokyo to disrupt the manifestation. I'll go, Hana said immediately. Absolutely not, Kyungmin protested. Your training has barely begun. You wouldn't last 5 minutes against a direct manifestation. Then teach me faster, Hana shot back. People are suffering right now. Yuna Lee studied the young scientist with something that might have been pride. She has the right spirit, she said to her companions. The kind of courage that we lost over our centuries of careful evolution. Courage without ability is just suicide, Taehyun pointed out. But ability without courage is useless, Minji added. Perhaps it's time for a field test. The evolved humans had a brief, silent conversation that involved complex facial expressions and subtle gestures. Finally, Yuna nodded. We'll send a small team, she decided. Myself, Kyungmin, and Dr. Kim. But this is reconnaissance only. We observe, we learn, and we retreat if necessary. What about me? Daeho asked. You're needed here to coordinate the global response, Yuna replied. If this manifestation is successful, the Void Collective will attempt similar events in other major cities. We need someone organizing the defense. Hana felt a mixture of excitement and terror as she realized she was about to face the enemy that had nearly destroyed humanity's future. But as she looked around the room at both evolved and baseline humans working together, she felt something else too. Hope. When do we leave? She asked. Now, Yuna replied. The manifestation is growing stronger by the hour. If we're going to act, it has to be immediately. As they prepared to depart, Minho pulled Hana aside. There's something you should know, he said quietly. When you encounter the Void Collective directly, it will try to communicate with you. It will offer you things, knowledge, power, and end to suffering. Whatever you do, don't listen. Don't respond. Don't even acknowledge that you can hear it. Why? Hana asked. Because the moment you engage with it mentally, you give it a pathway into your consciousness. And once it's in, Minho's expression was haunted by memories from his people's past. 6 months later, Dr. Hana Kim stood on the roof of the Seoul Training Center and watched the sky tear open. The Void Collective had finally arrived in force, and reality itself was coming apart at the seams. Across the horizon, patches of absolute darkness were spreading like cancer through the atmosphere. Where they touched, matter became uncertain. Buildings flickered between existing and not existing. Gravity worked in random directions and time moved in stuttering fits and starts. Global Quantum Network Status Report, Hana called into her communicator. In the months since Tokyo, she had become the primary coordinator between the evolved humans and the awakened human resistance. Network holding steady, came Deho Park's voice from the command center below. We have active nodes in 200 cities worldwide. Approximately 1 million awakened humans are maintaining the defensive grid. 1 million. It sounded like a lot until you remembered that there were 8 billion people on Earth. But those million awakened minds were connected through the quantum field in ways that made them far more powerful than their numbers suggested. Incoming. Transmission from the collective, announced So Young Yoon from her position at the quantum communication array. They want to talk. Put it through, Hana decided. But maintain full shields. The air in front of her shimmered and a figure appeared. Not quite solid, not quite illusion. It looked human, but its proportions were slightly wrong, as if someone had tried to recreate a person from memory. I am the voice of unity, it said, and its words bypassed the ears to speak directly to the mind. We offer one final opportunity for peaceful integration. Surrender your chaotic individuality. and your species will be preserved as part of our greater consciousness. And if we refuse? Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. Then you will be harvested, the voice replied with inhuman calm. Your quantum potential will be extracted and added to our collective power. Your bodies will serve as vessels for our consciousness. Your children will know only unity. From the command center, Yuna Lee's voice joined the conversation. There is a third option, she said, appearing beside Hana as she materialized from quantum teleportation. You could leave this galaxy and seek easier prey elsewhere. The Void Collective's avatar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You evolved humans amuse us. You survived our last harvest through cowardice, hiding in your pocket dimension like frightened children. But these baseline humans cannot hide. They are bound to this reality by their crude biology. You're right, Hana said, surprising everyone, including herself. We can't hide. We can't run. But we can do something you don't understand. And what is that? We can change. The avatar's expression flickered with something that might have been confusion. Change is chaos. Chaos is inefficiency. We will eliminate these flaws from your species. Our flaws are our strength, Hana replied, and she opened her mind to the quantum network that connected her to awakened humans around the world. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel a million different perspectives, a million unique ways of seeing and understanding reality. There was Rajesh in Mumbai, using his awakened abilities to shield a hospital full of children. There was Marie in Paris, leading a group meditation that was keeping reality stable across half of France. There was David in São Paulo, who had discovered that quantum fields responded to music and was literally singing his city into existence. Do you see? Hana asked the avatar. You think consciousness is about control, about order, about everyone thinking the same way. But consciousness is about diversity. It's about the beautiful chaos of 8 billion different minds all seeing the world differently. The avatar's form began to waver as the Void Collective tried to process this concept. Diversity is weakness. Unity is strength. Then why are you losing? It was true. Around the world, the reality distortions were being held back by networks of awakened humans who refused to think the same way about anything. They couldn't agree on the best way to use their quantum abilities, so they tried dozens of different approaches simultaneously. They couldn't coordinate their efforts perfectly, so they created a chaotic defense that the Void Collective couldn't predict or counter. This is impossible, the avatar said, its voice becoming distorted. No species has ever resisted absorption at this level of quantum development. That's because no species has ever been like humanity, said Minho Choi, joining the conversation from his position, coordinating the global response. We are not just individuals. We are not just a collective. We are something new, a conscious network that preserves individuality while enabling connection. In the command center below, Daeho Park was watching tactical displays that showed the battle from a strategic perspective. The Void Collective's forces were vast and powerful, but they were designed to overcome unified resistance. Against humanity's chaotic, diverse, utterly unpredictable defense, they were struggling. Quantum disruption field detected, So-young announced. They're trying to sever our network connections. Countermeasures? Daeho asked. Already implemented, came the reply from awakened humans around the world. But not as a coordinated response, as 1,000 different solutions all being tried at once. Some worked, some didn't, but enough succeeded to keep the network intact. The avatar of the Void Collective was becoming increasingly agitated. You cannot maintain this chaos indefinitely. Your networks will collapse. Your minds will break from the strain of connection without unity. Maybe, Hana admitted, but that's a risk we're willing to take. Because the alternative is becoming like you, perfect, unified, and dead to everything that makes consciousness beautiful. She opened her mind fully to the quantum network, sharing her perspective with everyone connected to it. The response was immediate and overwhelming, a surge of human consciousness that swept across the planet like a wave. But this wasn't the cold, controlled unity of the Void Collective. This was something warmer and wilder, the consciousness of a species that had learned to think together without losing the ability to think differently. The effect on the reality distortions was immediate. Where the Void Collective had been tearing holes in space-time, human consciousness was weaving new patterns. Where it had been imposing order through destruction, humanity was creating order through connection. It's working. Kyung-min reported from her position monitoring the quantum fields. The distortions are stabilizing. Reality is reasserting itself. But the Void Collective wasn't finished. The Avatar's form solidified, becoming more menacing. If we cannot absorb you, then we will destroy you. Better that consciousness should end than that it should remain imperfect. The darkness in the sky began to condense, forming into shapes that defied description. These were the Void Collective's true weapons. Entities of pure negation that could unmake matter and energy at the quantum level. Everyone hold the line, Hana called into the network. This is it. This is what we've been preparing for. Around the world, 1 million awakened humans reached deeper into their quantum potential than ever before. They weren't trying to fight the negation entities directly. That would have been impossible. Instead, they were doing something much more fundamentally human. They were telling stories. Each awakened mind became a narrator, describing the world as it should be rather than as the Void Collective wanted it to become. They told stories of cities where children played in parks, of families gathering for dinner, of scientists making discoveries and artists creating beauty. They told stories of hope and love and the stubborn human refusal to give up. And because they were connected through the quantum field, their stories became reality. The negation entities faltered as they encountered a universe that refused to be unmade. Every time they tried to erase something, a human imagination somewhere insisted that it should exist. Every time they imposed entropy, human creativity responded with new patterns of order. This is not possible, the Avatar said, its voice now clearly desperate. Consciousness cannot override the fundamental laws of physics. Who says we're overriding them? Asked Minji Kang, who had been studying the phenomenon. We're just showing them new possibilities. The quantum field responds to consciousness, and human consciousness is the most creative force in the universe. The battle raged for hours, reality itself serving as the battlefield. But gradually and possibly humanity began to win, not through superior force or perfect coordination, but through something the Void Collective could never understand. The power of 8 billion different minds all choosing to believe in the same beautiful, chaotic, imperfect world. The Avatar began to fade, its connection to this reality becoming unstable. We will return, it promised. In 1,000 years, 10,000 years, we will find a way to overcome your chaos. Maybe, Hana replied. But by then, we'll have thought of new kinds of chaos you can't imagine. That's what humans do. We change, we grow, we become something new, and we'll always be one step ahead of anything that tries to make us all the same. The Avatar vanished and the reality distortions began to collapse. Across the Earth, the sky cleared as normal physics reasserted itself. The Void Collective was retreating, its forces pulling back into the spaces between dimensions. But as the immediate danger passed, something remarkable was happening. The flight to Tokyo took only minutes in the evolved human ship, but it felt like hours to Dr. Hana Kim. Through the curved viewing windows, she could see the reality distortion growing larger as they approached, a dark wound in the sky that seemed to suck light out of the world around it. Remember what I taught you? Kyungmin Seo said softly, her hand on Hana's shoulder. Feel the quantum field, but don't try to control it. Let it flow through you. When they landed in a park near the center of the distortion, Hana immediately understood why Minho had been so worried. The air itself felt wrong here, thick and heavy like breathing soup. Worse, she could hear something at the edge of her mind, a whisper that promised answers to questions she didn't even know she had. Don't listen, Yuna warned, seeing Hana's expression. Focus on my voice, on your breathing, on anything but that whisper. They made their way through streets filled with people who stood motionless, their eyes staring at nothing. Some of them were clearly tourists, families with cameras still hanging around their necks. Others were business people in suits frozen in the middle of phone calls that would never be completed. Are they dead? Hana whispered. No, Kyungmin replied, scanning one of the motionless figures with a handheld device. Their bodies are fine, but their consciousness has been borrowed. As they moved deeper into the affected area, Hana began to feel the quantum field more clearly than ever before. It was twisted here, corrupted by something that felt like infection spreading through living tissue. But underneath the corruption, she could sense something else. Human minds fighting back, trying to maintain their individuality against overwhelming pressure. There, Yuna pointed to a building where the distortion seemed strongest. The manifestation is anchored to that location. The building had been an office complex, but now it looked like something from a nightmare. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in a slow rhythm. Windows flickered between, showing the normal interior and revealing glimpses of impossible spaces filled with geometric shapes that hurt to perceive. "How do we fight something like this?" Hana asked. "We don't fight it directly," Kyungmin explained. "We disrupt its connection to this reality. The Void Collective exists mostly in other dimensions. What we're seeing is just the tip of something much larger. If we can sever its anchor point..." She was interrupted by movement in the building. Figures began emerging from the entrance. People who walked with perfect synchronization, their faces blank and peaceful. But their eyes held no human warmth. "The infected," Yuna said grimly. "They'll try to stop us from reaching the anchor point." The infected people moved with inhuman coordination, forming a living barrier between the team and the building. But they didn't attack immediately. Instead, one of them, a young man in a business suit, stepped forward and spoke. "Why do you resist?" he asked, and his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Hana's bones. "We offer unity. We offer an end to loneliness, to suffering, to the chaos of individual existence." Hana felt the temptation in those words. The promise of never being alone again, of never having to make difficult decisions or face uncertainty. But she also remembered what Minho had told her about not engaging with the Void Collective mentally. "Don't answer," Yuna whispered. "Let me handle this." But Yuna's response wasn't what Hana expected. Instead of speaking, the evolved human began to sing, a wordless melody that seemed to come from the quantum field itself. The sound was beautiful and painful at the same time, like the memory of something precious that had been lost. The infected people faltered, their perfect coordination breaking as individual expressions flickered across their faces. For just a moment, Hana could see the real people underneath, scared, confused, fighting to regain control of their own minds. "Now," Kyungmin said, and they ran toward the building. Inside, reality became even more unstable. Floors existed at impossible angles, corridors stretched into infinity, and gravity seemed to work by different rules in each room. But Kyungmin's quantum sensors led them toward the center of the distortion, where something waited that made Hana's quantum-sensitive mind recoil in horror. It was a node, a crystalline structure that pulsed with dark energy, connected by threads of twisted light to the motionless people throughout the city. And standing beside it was another infected human, but this one was different. She wore the uniform of a Japanese physicist, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of vast intelligence. "Dr. Kimura," Kyungmin breathed. "I know her. She was one of Japan's leading quantum researchers." "Was?" the infected scientist replied with a smile that was both human and utterly alien. "Now I am part of something greater. We could make you an offer, Dr. Kim. Your quantum potential is already awakening. Join us willingly, and you could help guide humanity's integration into the collective." This time, Hana almost responded. The offer was seductive. Power, knowledge, an end to the loneliness of individual consciousness. But as she opened her mouth to speak, she felt something else in the quantum field around her. It was chaotic and wild, but undeniably human. The combined thoughts and dreams of millions of people who refused to give up their individuality. "No," she said firmly. "Humanity's strength comes from our differences, not from being the same." The infected scientist's smile faded. "Then you choose suffering. You choose conflict and loneliness and death. We choose to be human," Yuna replied, and she began to sing again. This time, Kyungmin and Hana joined in. They didn't know the words, but somehow they knew the melody. It was the song of consciousness itself, the rhythm of thoughts and emotions that made each person unique. And as they sang, something remarkable happened. The quantum field around them began to pulse with new energy. Not the controlled, refined power of the evolved humans, but something raw and unpredictable. The chaotic creativity that Yuna had said was humanity's greatest strength. The node began to crack. Dark energy leaked from the crystal structure as the threads connecting it to the infected people started to fray. Throughout the city, motionless figures began to blink and look around in confusion. But the Void Collective wasn't finished. The infected scientist raised her hands, and the air around them filled with visions. scenes of humanity's future if they continued to resist. Wars between awakened and unawakened humans, civilizations destroying themselves with quantum weapons. The slow extinction of consciousness as isolated minds could not survive the challenges ahead. This is what independence brings, she said. Division, destruction. Join us and we will spare your species this fate. Hana felt her resolve weakening as the visions became more vivid and horrifying. But then she remembered something from her quantum training. The feeling of connection she had experienced when Kyungmin had touched her mind. Not the empty unity of the collective, but the warm recognition of shared humanity. You're wrong, she said, and her voice carried a new strength. Unity doesn't require surrender. Connection doesn't require control. She reached out with her newly awakened quantum senses, feeling for the minds of the infected people throughout the city. Instead of trying to control them or break their connection to the collective, she simply offered them a choice, a reminder of what it felt like to be individual, unique, free. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of minds began to reassert their independence, not through force but through the simple desire to be themselves. The node cracked further, its dark energy becoming unstable. Impossible, the infected scientist gasped, her alien composure finally breaking. No species has ever resisted at this stage of integration. That's because you never encountered humanity before, Kyungmin said with satisfaction. We told you. Our chaotic creativity is our greatest strength. The node finally shattered, sending shockwaves through the quantum field that Hana could feel all the way to her bones. The reality distortion collapsed like a punctured balloon, leaving only a normal office building with very confused people standing in the lobby. But as they emerged into the afternoon sunlight, Yuna's expression was troubled. This was just a probe, she said. A test of our defenses. The real attack is still coming. How long do we have? Hana asked. Based on what we've learned today? Maybe 6 months, Kyungmin replied. The Void Collective now knows that humanity can resist its influence. It will need time to adapt its strategy. Then we use that time, Hana said firmly. We awaken as many people as possible. We teach them to resist. We prepare for war. As they returned to their ship, Hana felt the quantum field around her more clearly than ever before. She could sense awakened humans all over the world, some just beginning to develop their abilities, others already strong enough to shield entire communities from the collective's influence. But she could also sense something else, a vast intelligence stirring in the spaces between dimensions, analyzing what had happened in Tokyo and planning its response. The Void Collective had been surprised by humanity's resistance, but it would not be surprised again. The next phase of the war for consciousness was about to begin. And this time, humanity would face an enemy that had learned from its mistakes. Back at the training center in Korea, Daeho Park was coordinating reports from around the world.